Colonel, what do you remember about the 10 tragic days from February 9 to 18, 1913?
Mr. Madero came to us at the military college. We marched down the ramp from Chapultepec Castle to Paseo de la Reforma. We continued along Avenida Juarez and San Juan de Latran. The military column halted there because they heard shots from different directions. The aides had informed Mr. Madero to halt, both to take cover and to be able to assess the situation and dictate appropriate measures. When General Huerta arrived, he presented himself to Mr. Madero, offering his services. The force from the military college that followed Mr. Madero split into 3 columns, and when we arrived, many people from the town had joined. Madero was on horseback, and a man from the town offered him a flag, which he took, and people began cheering for him. Humble folks followed Mr. Madero. We advanced in 3 parallel columns until reaching Constitution Square. There, more shots were heard, originating from the cathedral, which was occupied by traitorous students from the military school of aspirants. They realized the proximity of the column led by President Madero and opened fire. We took cover, advanced protecting each other, and the advance continued, with Mr. Madero, displaying courage, pressing forward. When we reached the center of the square, the scene was tremendous, tragic. I saw countless women, children lying dead, and others writhing, undoubtedly wounded. There were many horses and soldiers, but the majority of the dead were civilians. Mr. Madero entered through the main door of the National Palace, and General Lauro Villar, the military commander who had taken charge of defending the National Palace, came out. Shortly after, gunfire was heard because General Huerta had ordered the execution of General Gregorio Ruiz, who had been captured. Later, we were going to relieve the sentry duty. I remember entering the palace courtyards and seeing General Reyes lying there. I knew him since childhood because my father, Colonel Eduardo Angeles Ramirez, took me around to meet military personnel since I was little. Numerous projectiles had wounded him. There had been a fierce battle. General Villar was injured in his shoulder during this firefight. He was presented to Mr. Madero, who ordered him to go and get treated. That's when Huerta took advantage and said to Mr. Madero, "There is no one else in command, let me take command." After that, 2 days later, Mr. Madero ordered the college to withdraw and return to the castle. From there, we only heard the noise of cannon shots, the noise of the battles around the citadel. Later, General Angeles had left by Mr. Madero's order since July to take charge of the campaign against the Zapatistas. So when this happened, General Angeles was in Cuernavaca, and a few days later, Madero went to Cuernavaca by car to bring General Angeles because he didn't feel safe due to the news he received, especially from his brother Gustavo, about the dissent of many people in whom he had placed trust. I remember that General Angeles arrived, greeted my Aunt Clara Kraus, his wife, and immediately continued his march to take charge of the troops he brought when they besieged the citadel. I remember he only brought an artillery group that was positioned in front of the citadel, some in San Cosme and others near Calzada de Las Vegas. He had his artillery observatory on the Independence column, as it is a very high point, where he observed with binoculars the effect of the fire directed by his batteries on the citadel. Later, they called General Angeles to report to Huerta at the National Palace, and there they made him a prisoner with President Madero and Vice President Pino Suarez and locked them inside the military armory office, which was then inside the palace. General Angeles says that when Huerta returned that night, already quite drunk, he said, "Long live the Republic, my general." That was his greeting. General Angeles later told me that when the city of Torreon in Coahuila fell a year later, when General Angeles and Northern Division defeated the traitorous Federal Army, he telegraphed Huerta, "Long live the Republic, my general," to remind him of what had happened in the 10 tragic days against Madero. All 3 were imprisoned in the National Palace, President Madero, Vice President Pino Suarez, and General Angeles. From there, they took Mr. Madero and Vice President Pino Suarez out to murder them.